You said you used to work in radio and you were in corporate America, and that's what you planned on doing.
When I left this area, I went to college in Boca, to Florida Atlantic University. And honestly, at that point in my life, my main goal was just to make a lot of money and to get out of here.
And well, where are you from?
From Attica.
You're from Attica.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And I thought I would never, ever come back. So it's funny how things come full circle. And I had quite a life in Florida where I got to see a lot of the things that now I realize were clutter. But I didn't realize it was like that at the time. I was just young and, getting through school and having a good time. So when I graduated from Florida Atlantic, and about a month later I moved to Charlotte because the market was booming for jobs.
What year was this?
1998.
Okay.
And I just wanted to work in corporate America doing marketing and advertising, which is what I went to school for. Mm-hmm. I always loved, just anything to do with business, anything to do with creating content and, giving a message out to sell something. Mm-hmm. And so I worked for Clear Channel, I worked for Singular Wireless, I worked for Bell South Mobility during the cell phone surge, which cracks me up now because I didn't even have a cell phone in college. My parents put one of those gigantic dinosaur phones in my car while I would drive.
The bag phone?
It was installed.
Only for emergency. Okay, I think I remember that. I remember that, yeah.
For when I drove up and down the coast, because I was young and, by myself. And actually, they would usually send somebody down to fly back with me or ride back with me.
Drive back, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't have a cell phone. So the cell phone surge and then Clear Channel Radio, and I loved it. It was a great experience, and I learned so much about business. And then 9/11 happened. I was pregnant with my daughter when the actual events took place, and shortly after that, maybe a few months later, Clear Channel let me go because advertising had severe cutbacks, if you remember back then. Yeah.
And what was your job with them? What were you doing? Were you doing marketing?
Yep, okay. Advertising, selling radio spots, doing
so you're
remotes.
in sales. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so at first I thought that was going to be fun, being a stay-at-home mom with a new baby, and then a few months later, I'd be honest with myself, that it's just not cut out for me to do it full time. And I think that women that feel that way make no apologies, because you don't have to feel like you want to be a stay-at-home mom. I think that for me, I was missing that creative part, and just working with adults, and just the possibilities of going to work and what could happen in my life. And I thought I wanted to teach her that. So I was pretty, when I moved to Charlotte, it was kind of like the Bible Belt. It was Bible Belt compared to here, and people were much more open about their spirituality. So I had joined a Bible study group. I was around women that were really feeding into me. And I really started thinking to myself, how can I make a difference? What would be my purpose? What would be my passion? And I was in a pretty deep quest, looking inwardly for a while. And I remember picking up this book called Do What You Love and the Money Will Come. And first laughing, because I'm thinking, well, I was trained to make money this way.
Right.
How would I make money doing what I love? Which cracks me up right now, but it was the truth. And when I kept asking myself what I was passionate about, I realized that I've always loved organizing. Since literally the age of 5, I can remember constantly organizing my room, rearranging it. I would go to my grandmother's house, ask her if I could organize her jewelry, her medicine cabinet, anything. She would let me. I was the first grandchild.
She probably loved it.
She loved it. Yeah. She was super encouraging.
You're doing her a huge favor.
She thought I did a great job. I don't know if it was true or not, but she told me I did. And when I thought back, I was like, man, this has been something that I've loved forever. But at the time, that there wasn't HGTV and Hoarders and Real Simple and Pinterest. There was none of that.
Yeah,
so
right.
I just thought, what do I do with this? I didn't know any professional organizers.
So you're talking like 2002, 3?
2002.
Right.
Yeah. And the only ones I knew about was Peter Walsh was on Oprah, and Julie Morgenstern had written a few books, and I had one of her books. It took me a while, but finally I said, just go for it and see what happens. So I started asking friends and people from Clear Channel and different people that I knew in Charlotte if I could organize their closet or rearrange their cabinets. And I realized after a few times, I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, I can see the after picture in my mind
before you even start. Wow.
And they see a cluttered mess and they feel overwhelmed.
Right.
And to me, it's already done in my mind. I just have to put the pieces together.
Wow.
It's just so simple in my head. And I thought that was easy for everybody, but I've realized that it's not. So, and for some reason, the bigger the mess, the more excited I got, which is so weird. So I loved it. And then all of a sudden I decided that I could no longer stay away from New York State because I had this little girl I was raising and I wanted her to be near her family. And I didn't have grandparents to help me and I didn't have my sisters to see her take her first steps. Like, everybody had to fly in to see anything. And she was the first, grandchild in our family. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And I thought, this is depressing. And then I just decided I had to come back. And so my husband's from here. He was kicking and screaming the whole way.
Oh, so he's from here?
Yeah.
And he didn't want to come back?
Nope. He was a sheriff in North Carolina.
Where's he from?
We went to high school together.
Oh, so you both went to Attica?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we went our separate ways for a while, which was kind of funny because he got signed for the minor leagues for baseball, and he had to go live in Canada. And as soon as he got back, I left for Florida. So we had a lot of time apart. But then my senior year in college, I came home for the summer and started hanging out and realized by the end of the summer, I was like, we're either walking away and never looking back or we're getting married. He goes, I guess we're getting married. Because I thought, it was funny. I would be down in Florida with all these things I thought I wanted, or be, dating somebody that had a yacht and be thinking about him and Attica going, this is not part of the plan.
Right.
But, so we ended up moving. He moved down there right before I graduated, and then we moved to Charlotte together. And then I got him to come back here. And then it just kind of...
And now what year did you move back here?
I moved back here in 2003. Almost 2004.
Okay.
Yeah, my daughter was like 2 years old.
Okay. So you're only in Charlotte for a few years.
5 years. Yeah.
About 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All
yeah.
Right. And so, so now you have this organizing thing going. So what do you got going on in your mind when you move back here? Like
I'm going to organize people. This is my calling.
In Attica.
Yeah, anywhere.
Anywhere.
And then people are like, "What is a professional organizer? What exactly is that? Oh, you organize people's closets." And they just weren't grasping it. So in the meantime, I first took a job back to corporate America with T-Mobile. And then after I had my son, it kind of made me stop and think, hey, I don't want to work as many hours as I worked and travel as much as I was traveling with an infant. So I opened up the consignment store, which is Berry Patch Kids, and it was on Jackson Street in Batavia.
I think I remember that.
Many years ago, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so I had that for 3 years, and then I wrote my first book in that store. And I knew that I had to do what I had to do, but in my head, I wasn't giving up on the organizing dream.
So what made you do the consignment thing?
Because in the South, as a new mom, I realized that I loved consignment for the fact that as soon as you were done with something, you could sell it. I don't keep things, obviously, for very long, and I hate clutter. So my daughter, as she was growing, I was just like, okay, she would wear the cutest outfits, and then when we were done, got rid of them, move on. And I thought, man, moms need that here. And at the time, consignment wasn't that big around here, and I just thought, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I'm kind of like that kind of person where
we'll try it, yeah.
So 3 years I did it. And then when the first book was published is when I sold the store, turned it into Mother Tongue Marketplace, which is the semi-annual consignment event at the Hamburg Fairgrounds. And that's been 13 years.
So after you sold the store and you wrote the book, you made a large consignment event.
Yeah.
That goes on every year.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay. And I still love it. I mean, it's twice a year. I love the moms that work with me. I love the families. I love the fact that they're not wasting stuff, but I think when you have a reason to get clutter out of your house, it's much more motivating. And when you're making money, that's very motivating. When you can sell what you have now to get what you need, Or some of the moms just sell stuff to like go on a family vacation or pay for their kids' travel baseball team. I mean, they all have their own goals. And it's just kind of worked. We help several charities in Buffalo, so that's really awesome. And it's just an awesome.
And now when is that? Is that already passed this year?
It's every March and September.
Okay, so it's twice a year.
Yep.
March and September.
Spring and fall.
And so tell me what the people can tell me what it is. Tell me what you do.
So it's a semi-annual, they call it a semi-annual family consignment event. And so they go on to my website and they enter all their inventory, they price it, the software prints out their tags, they attach the tags to their items, and the week that we set up at the fairgrounds, they bring it in and all the volunteers put it out, basically set it up like a department store. And so then when we open to the public, we have a private pre-sale just for consigners, volunteers, heroes, which are any law enforcement, nurses, EMTs, stuff like that, and expecting moms. So that's our private sale. Friday through Sunday, we're open to the public. Families come in. I mean, everything has a barcode. So you just shop like normal, go through the checkout line, they scan everything, and every night these families get to see what they're earning. When people know the charities and the organizations that need the stuff, that's when they're motivated also. Because a lot of times when I speak to audiences, they'll say, well, Jennifer, where can I give this or where can I give that? And the only places they know about are Goodwill and Salvation Army. So part of my ministry is helping on our website now. We are basically collecting a list of charities that need the stuff nationwide.
Right, I see what you're saying.
So that if you want to give,
it's kind of a central location, so you can go through a list.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. Good.
So that's part of it. So I can send you that too.
Okay.
So that's Mother's Time Marketplace.
And so you started doing that, and then then you started writing more books. I mean, what happened then?
After the first book came out, the publisher that I signed with, I was writing a book probably every year and a half. It was a series that we did, and it was called Organize Now, and it was a total of technically 3, but the first one turned into our revised edition because it did so well. So, and just rode that wave and started speaking, and as the one-on-one organizing was still going on, which a lot of it turned into coaching. So instead of just coming in now and organizing somebody's clothes or their papers, I was coaching them on goal setting and improving their overall life and improving their relationships and balancing, working or being a parent, like all these things, keeping them accountable after we decided what they wanted their life to look like when they came up with that vision of what they wanted for their life. I would be kind of an accountability coach to make sure we saw it through. And that's when I really started seeing people's lives completely change, because we were physically getting rid of the clutter, the stuff that was in the space, but they were getting rid of the mental clutter. They were getting rid of the baggage from their past. I mean, clutter comes in all shapes and sizes.
So now you're turning into like another whole different area with that.
It's still all intertwined though.
It
still
is.
All has to do with clutter.
It is. Yeah. But now you're looking at something different. I mean, you're looking at a person, like trying to retrain a person's way of thinking is what you're doing.
Very much so. And what I would find is there was so much that was tied psychologically, even to the point that if a person had parents raised in the Great Depression era, that affected them, which affected the next generation. And how much, we've changed, because, even my own parents, they would say, well, we'd save things for you girls because we'd be afraid that you wouldn't be able to afford it. And because they couldn't afford it when they were first married. None of us got married when we were 18. All of us, 2 of us went to college. So it's like we were more established, and then we lived in a society that if you wanted a furniture set, you could get it for a few $100s.
It's a throwaway society.
Yeah, exactly. So it's completely changed.
That's right.
And that's where a lot of people have felt stuck. And so if you're raised like that, you feel a tremendous amount of guilt letting go of something. Or if somebody gave you something, you feel a lot of guilt if you don't want it anymore. So a lot of the questions I always start with, besides, I first try to get to know their bigger picture, what they would hope their life would look like and hope their home would look like, and more importantly, how it would feel. As I constantly say, do you love this and do you use this? Because if you love something, even if you don't use it, and it just sits there and you love it and it makes you happy, it's worth keeping. Or maybe you don't really love, your blender, but it works good and you use it, it's good enough. So those two questions really narrow people in on what is important, because we just fill our lives and our houses with stuff without really thinking about it. We're not as intentional as we should be. So that's the interesting part.
So now, you've kind of taken a different step in that you're kind of going faith-based now, which is different than what you had planned.
Yeah.
Right? So how did that evolve?
It's funny because I think when I had my publisher, I was also on Winging It Buffalo Style as their organizing expert. So I was doing these things and I was so worried about letting that part of me out because I didn't want to, quote, offend anybody that may not.
And you didn't want to label yourself.
Yeah, and I didn't want to label myself, and I was worried about, going outside the box. And then in 2017, everything changed for me as far as my own aha moment, I guess you could say, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to make other people happy. I can only be who I was created to be, and if it's not for everybody, that's fine. I would rather spend my energy and my time working with those people that want to learn exactly what I teach and how I teach it. So if it's not for everybody, that's totally fine with me. But it was scary.
Right.
It's scary in your hometown, your home area, to step out like that. We're not in the Bible Belt here. It's very different than it was in North Carolina. But it is, I think it's needed. I think people need to realize that there is a greater purpose in their life than just accumulating things. I call it Target high, 5-minute high, where you're in Target or whatever store, but you see something you never planned on getting, and next thing you know, you have to have it, and you're so excited through the checkout line, even maybe putting it in your car, driving home, and a day, a week, a month, it just depends. Is that one thing still making you feel that joy? Chances are not. It's like that. I'm about getting rid of the clutter so that your life and your home can be simple. That what you have is a good representation of who you are and your family, and that you love and use your stuff, and if you don't, you let it go, so that your life is easier, your home is easier to maintain. The more clutter we have, the less space, time, energy, and money we have in our life.
Right.
And I call that STEM, just to make it stick in people's heads. Space, time, energy, and money.
Okay.
So everything you have, like if you decided you were going to put a pool in, you'd have to really think, I'm giving up space, I'm definitely giving up time, I'm giving up a whole heck of a lot of money, and I'm giving up energy. Does that outweigh the joy and fun and all these perks of having the pool? Yeah,
that's why I chose not to.
But how many times do people stop and think that way? You have to think that way before you add more things into your life. Because if you don't and you're not intentional, next thing you know, you wake up and this is the number one word I hear is, I'm so overwhelmed. Why do we want to live overwhelmed? We don't.
True.
It's not the way we were meant to live. So it's really about saying, okay, this is clutter. This is stuff I don't need, I don't love, I don't use, and I'm going to let that go in a really good way, as far as like giving it, being responsible with it, not just tossing it into a landfill. And then you have this stuff left. And so in order to be organized, everything you own needs a home. So that it can easily be put away when you're done using it. If you don't have room to give everything a home, you have too much stuff. It's a simple formula. People don't usually like to hear that because they like to live in the maybe.
The what?
They like to live in the maybe, like the what if. Someday this happens. Someday, my kid might want to dress up in a 1970s costume, so I got to hang on.
And I got these clothes.
Yeah. So I hear that a lot. So I'm always like, let's live in the now more than the maybe. But,
So you're telling people live in the now?
Yes, because I've cleared out so many homes with people that have passed away, and if you've ever done that, you'll never get it through your head better than in that moment where you're like, they had worked their butts off their whole life for this stuff, and nothing went with them. So you hope that it brought them joy. You hope it wasn't stressing them out, making them feel overwhelmed, because what was the point? What was the point? They could have freed up time with people they love. They could have had energy to go travel and do things they wanted. They could have freed up money for that travel. They could have freed up space to, breathe easier in their home. I mean, it's a waste of time.
So that's the point that you're trying to make to people when you're when you're telling them what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just making life simpler.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And more intentional. And actually, the name of the book that I'm finishing right now is called Purpose Over Possessions, and that sums it up pretty good. I want people to choose purpose over choosing possessions. And I'm not saying live in an empty house.
Right.
I'm not a minimalist. I don't live in a tiny house. But, you know, I want people to keep it in keep control of it. Don't let your stuff control you.
Right. Good. That's good. Yeah. And so you have 3 events coming up here.
Yeah.
Now, tell me the difference between those events. And
so the first one is Declutter Your Life, where you really take a look and say, what exactly is clutter? Because people might have their house packed to the roof and they might not even think of it as clutter.
Right.
And that's fine. If they're living a happy, joyful life, I would leave them alone. I never tell people what to get rid of.
Okay.
But if they can say, you know, you realize that clutter comes in the form of stuff, but it also comes in the form of debt, you know, excess weight, negative voices in your head telling you can't do this or you're not good at that, baggage from relationships, I mean, all sorts of stuff, illness, lots of things. And so realizing and recognizing what clutter is and then learning how to eliminate it. And what is the motivation behind that? Because a lot of people want to clear clutter. A lot of people I talk to want to clear clutter, but they just don't know how to start. And it really is a simple process when you break it down. So I want to teach them that process and make it so they can go home and put this to use.
Okay.
And then the second one is find your purpose. And the reason why that's the second one is because for me, the most exciting part of clearing clutter would be freeing up that space, time, energy, and money for a bigger purpose.
Right.
It doesn't mean necessarily quitting your job that you worked at for 30 years when you're making a good living and going, you know, and being a starving artist. It doesn't necessarily look like any specific form, but it's that feeling inside where you're doing what you felt you should do. Like you're using the gifts you were given, kind of like I felt when I realized organizing was the thing that I was meant to do.
And that could also declutter your thinking and make you so you're not.
Oh, there's tons of inner clutter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mental clutter, inner clutter, call it whatever you want.
Can we mention an IW in there?
Part of my mission is to get people pumped up to get rid of the clutter. But like I said earlier, I don't want to just go taking it and dumping it into a landfill.
Right.
I want them to put it into the hands of the people that need it most. And I want people to start looking at their communities and saying, who can I help with the stuff that is collecting dust in a closet? And there is, there's no reason in this community or this entire county why anybody should go without blankets, pillows, clothing, shoes. There's no reason because we have it. We're just not sharing it. So what we want to do is we want people to bring the stuff that they're willing to let go of and the things that the why needs. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because that's part of my local give chapter of my nonprofit is trying to raise awareness.
Is there a list? Do you have a list of things or just bring something?
We will.
For part 1, for your first one. Okay, so part 2, you've told me what that, now what is your third appearance?
Part 3 is successful time management. And that's because when you free up, when you're decluttered, so the hope is they can declutter their life and they'll feel freer. They'll free up some time. They can start using that time and that energy for their purpose. Whatever it looks like. Maybe they want to start volunteering at the animal shelter more. Maybe they want to start a business. I mean, who knows? It could be anything. But when that happens, how are they going to balance it all? How does that look? What does that look like on a daily basis? How to schedule your time? How to say yes and no? If you have like a major goal in mind, you can't say yes to everything else. You know, so people really need to understand the concept of time management and how it can be simplified and all the things that go along with it, especially nowadays, because our lives are crazy. And how many times do you hear people say, I'm so busy? But the question is, are you productive? Because busy and productive are 2 different things. So it's really just giving them the skills of time management, but also the kind of the empowerment behind it of being intentional with their time.
Okay.
Doing it their way. You know?
Right. Right. Yeah, I deal with time management every day, all day.
Yeah, it's crazy. And with this, it makes it even harder.
Yes.
This is supposed to make our life easier, but
it makes it harder, but it also makes it easier because you can put it all in.
Yeah.
So it is harder.
And I just think that people, you can't just talk to people about this stuff. They want to know steps they can
Specifics.
take. They want to know things they can do differently. Nobody likes to just be talked to about, go out and live your purpose. Like, what does that look like?
What does that
How
mean?
do I get there?
Right.
What's that look like on a daily basis?
So you actually come into someone's home and do all this in these 3 things you're going to be speaking about.
I've done it for years.
So it's not just the clutter. You include those other
goal
2
setting,
things with it.
Okay. The goal setting's huge. The accountability is big. People have a lot of dreams and goals and aspirations, but they always find excuses not to keep going for it. Or that negative inner clutter tells them, who are you to think that you're going to start this or you're going to start that? And so they need the encouragement and the accountability. That's when I've seen people be really successful.